You're listening to DruidCast, episode 173. Hello my friends and welcome to DruidCast episode 173. I am your host Dave the Bard, and DruidCast is brought to you on or around the 20th of every month by the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids. If you want to find out more about the Order and our courses, you can do that over there at our website www.druidry.org. Opening the show, you heard a wonderful tune by guitar virtuoso Richard Durrant called The Deep Dark Woods from his album Stringhenge, and we will have another tune from that album later in the show. Now, I've hung up my walking boots this month with the return of the talkie bit, and this will be with Druid and author Andrew Anderson as we discuss his new book Artio and Arteos, a journey towards the Celtic bear gods, and a fascinating interview it is too. If you enjoy the show, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and then you'll be notified of each show as they are released. DruidCast was started in June 2007, so was one of the very early shows in podcasting, and touch wood, we have released a show every single month since then, loud and free. And if you're a new listener or someone who has been listening since those early days, thank you again for downloading the show. So, on with said show. Here is this month's Talkie Bit with Andrew Anderson. The Talkie Bit. Well, thank you for coming on to DruidCast, Andrew. I've read your book, and first thing I need to know, really, is how to pronounce the two names of the book.
Yeah. Artio, that's the straightforward one. The bear goddess Artio. And then the male god is, I've called him Artauis. In record, he's referred to as Arteus, but that is obviously kind of a Latinized, Romanized version of a name. So generally, he's either known by Arteus or Artauis. So I called him in the book Artauis to kind of move away from the Roman association.
Nice, okay. A journey towards the Celtic bear gods. And it's a true journey. I read the book and it felt like I was on the journey with you. It felt like one of those documentaries where you travel with somebody and they show you all these different things. What a journey. So, what was the seed of Awen that kind of began the journey of your book? There must have been a point where you thought, I'm going to write a book about bear god and goddess.
Yeah, it's really not the direction I thought I was going to go in. I'll be completely honest. I published my first book, The Ritual of Writing, which came out back in 2019, and I was having a book launch at the Obod Summer Gathering, kind of at one of the bookshops in Glastonbury. And a couple of days before, I just kind of thought, I need to know what my next project is. I really kind of need to know where I'm going. And I was reading lots and lots of other pagan portal books at the time by people like Danu Forrest, who wrote about Gwyn ap Neath, and there's a really good one on Thor as well. And I thought, well, I'd love to write one of these. I'd love to write one of these about a god or a goddess and just really kind of explore that area. My only problem was that my Obod journey just hadn't had anything about deity in it at all. So, how can I write about a book about a god or a god? And actually, there's been kind of no real connection for me. And the only name that just kept popping up in my head was Artio. And that came from Ricky Gillison, another who I interview in the book, I talked to in the book. He shared something on Facebook about this bear god called Artio, and it was a little joke, and it just stuck. And it was like, okay, well, why don't I be the person to write the book on Artio? This is the only connection I have. And then I kind of researched Artio a bit and found out there's practically nothing on Artio. So I then went, oh, well, there's this other bear god, there's this Artauis, I'll join them together. And then found out that there's even less on him. So it kind of was a bit of a faltering start, but from the very few bits of information, that's why I went on the journey, because it was literally the way that I had to find them was by physically going on pilgrimages as well as spiritually going on a journey as well to find out who they were.
So So before you went off on your journey for the book, did you have any pre-experience with, you know, the bear as a spirit or a guide, or
just very, very minorly? I mean, it wasn't massive. Like I say, there had been this one experience, I recall it at the start of the book, where I was coming to Glastonbury. I was leaving home, and I live in a very weird place. I live in the middle of a town centre. I live in the middle of Stratford-upon-Avon, right in a tourist, opposite Shakespeare's house. So it's always busy and it's kind of bustling. And whenever I leave my house, I always worry about it. So I kind of was, the night before, I was just like, okay, something, just come and protect my house while I'm not here. Please make sure that it's looked after. And I just had this vision of this enormous bear standing over my house, roaring, as if defensively trying to keep people away. And that was the only real experience I'd had of a bear. And it was like, okay, so that's the god then. That's who it is. And then I saw this post, and then I was like, oh, that must be Artio who came to visit me. Yeah. So, you know, it was very minor and very limited. I had no idea it would turn into this journey.
Yeah. Wow. And of course, it really did turn into a journey, because one of the first things you do in the book is get in the car and drive across to mainland Europe. And one of the things that I don't think there is a picture of the archaeological image that you talk about. I don't think there's a picture in the book of that image.
Yes, there might be. There might not have been in the edition you've got, but I got a friend to illustrate it for me, because I kind of realised just how important this was going to be.
Yeah.
So there is like a little tiny illustration in the book,
right, there it is,
about what it's like.
Okay. Well, maybe you can talk a little bit about that journey, because obviously you've had this sudden presence of this immense bear deity, and the next thing you do is on this journey is get in the car and head off. Yeah. Where did you go, and what happened?
Well, the first trip was to Bern in Switzerland, and I decided to do that one by train. Also, because I'd never been on the Eurostar before, so I thought, you know, hey, I fancy going under the Channel. Let's give this a go. So I got the train out to Bern. The reason I went there is there is so little about Artio. There's like 5 inscriptions and a statue. And I thought, if I'm going to do this, you can literally only see a picture of the statue from one angle on the internet. It's very, very limited what you see. And I thought, if I'm going to write about this, I've actually got to go and see it in person. And so I really didn't want to go. I'll be honest, it seemed like a really good idea. And then the actual reality of travel dawned on me, and I was like, oh, I'm really not enjoying this. So, you know, after pretty much an entire day of traveling across Europe on various trains, I kind of got stopped at a station when I'd missed my train, and I was like, oh, right, okay, I'm here for a while now. I just wish I could turn around and go home. And I leant on this glass window of a shop. And then I turned around and looked in the window, and there was this card behind me, which was 2 kind of bears cuddling each other. And it said, I love you, big bear hugs. And I was like, okay, this is a message. Keep going. Keep going. You're nearly there. And Bern is just, it is the most beautiful, magical place. It looks like a fairy tale, the centre. It is, you know, it's just glorious. And there is this big bear park in the middle where there are 3 bears that just lumber around in the middle of the city. And I spent most of my free time there kind of sitting with the bears and just trying to absorb the atmosphere. But the town, the city is just full of bear statues and bear artwork, and they're just everywhere. And it was a wonderful, wonderful place to start the journey, let alone going to see the statue, which, having kind of journeyed all that way and kind of struggled with that journey, the moment I saw that statue, I was a great big wuss, and I kind of burst into tears because it was such an emotional moment of, I am here, I am sitting with this statue, I am looking at this statue. And there was no one else there. I spent a lot of time with that statue, just trying to pick things up from it, really trying to analyse it. And in the time I was in there, city centre museum, 3 people came in and they all ignored the statue. And then when I spoke to people afterwards, the people who were running my hotel, they had no idea there was a bear goddess in their museum. And even I met up with a couple of Druid chums who me around some places in Bern, and they only really kind of were just beginning. The Druid community was only just beginning to get into Artio in Bern. Wow. There is now an Artio Grove. I am so thrilled. I'm hoping to go out back to Bern one day to do a little bit of a launch of the book, and I would love to meet some more of the members of the Grove of Artio. That would just be a real honour.
Yeah, hiding in plain sight.
Yeah,
you know, that's the thing, and it's one of those things that you know. It's when you're into this stuff and you're on a journey like you're on. It's easy to forget how much you've learned over the years, isn't it? And I guess, and I had a similar experience when I went to see the Venus of Willendorf, you know, in Austria. You know, it's that kind of like it's when it's there all the time.
Yeah.
It's just there all of the time, but you've come from a different country on a huge journey, and there it is. It's such a big thing, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah,
you know?
and their city is kind of overwhelmed with other bears. I mean, they've got bears in the, you know, the reason the town was set up is because one of the kings, one of the emperors, said, "I will name this city after the first animal I hunt here," and he hunted a bear. So the whole mythology of the town is around that. It's around the bears that they have in the bear garden. They don't quite back far enough into the Roman mindset to say, actually, yes, there's bears here now, but there were bears here in the Roman period. And actually, very close by is where we find the kind of the very, very ancient bear worship in the caves. So there is this big bear spirit which infuses that whole landscape, which comes back at different points in history. It kind of bubbles up again. But it's there in Artio, just in the same way as it's there now.
On your journey, you met lots of people. You went to lots of places. What do you think it is about the bear when you look at prehistory that just spoke to the hearts or spirits of those ancestors, to the point where they looked on it as some kind of deity or guardian spirit or something like that? What do you think that would have been?
I think they saw a version of us. I think there is this connection between bears and people, which is very ancient. You know, some of the first mythology we have is around the bear mother, the bear mother being that humanity ends up through this bear mother being kind of part human, part bear. And there's always been this sense that we are connected somehow. I mean, I point out to people, you know, that we have teddy bears now, and yes, they come later and they come through a very different route, but there is still that connection between bears. And, you know, and there's Paddington and Rupert and Yorick Burnison, you know, and there's all of these bears that we know and we love that are in our culture, and there has to be this link that joins us, this kind of primal link between us and them.
Yeah. I haven't seen it, but I've heard it said that if a bear skeleton is laid out, just the bones, it actually looks very similar to a very large human skeleton.
Yeah, that would make sense, because of course they walk upright like us, like so few of the other animals do. Yeah. But they actually can stand up and walk around like we do. So that's, like you're saying, that skeleton, that's probably that closeness is probably there. Yeah. And of course, you have the twin aspects, I guess. Are those you know, kind of reflected in Artio and Arteos, the kind of the mother aspect, the mother bear? You know, when you have a protective, even a human mother, they're the mother bear, aren't they? You know. Yes. And then then on the other side, you have the berserker, you have the warrior, you have that kind of aspect. Are they reflected in the god and goddess of the bear that you've discovered? Yeah, Artio definitely. Artio is our mother. The first iteration of the Earth Mother that we see in kind of archaeology is the bear goddess. So whereas now if we perceive an Earth goddess, we kind of see her as human, maybe, or having qualities of the world. For those early societies, she was the bear. And there is a sense with Artio that she sees us into the world and out of the world. So she's kind of a midwife at both ends of our lives, which would make sense for a bear because, you know, they go into hibernation and then they come back out again with cubs that are born in the dens. And so this sense that she brings us out of the darkness into the light and back in again is definitely there with Artio. With Artawis, the Berserker is there, kind of. It's very odd because even the Celts, one of the Celtic wishes would that you would be like a bear in battle, but Artawis seems to have so many other facets as well. He is a warrior. There's no way that he can be a bear god and not be a warrior. He has to be. You know, what else is he going to be? But there's also a sense that he's a leader. There's a sense that he's a magician as well. A magician may be something kind of slightly shamanic. I propose in this book that Artawis is actually an iteration of a god. He's closer to something like Beowulf, or closer to somebody like Arthur. The link between Artawis and Arthur has been kind of vaguely explored before, and I do a bit of it here. It's very difficult to nail down to say, are they the same iteration? But there are definite aspects of Arthur that are reflected in who Artawis would have been.
Yeah, because the root of the name Arthur is art, which is, you know,
absolutely
the bear, so that's something I used in one of my songs, you know, Arthur the bear.
Absolutely.
So did you find any other kind of Arthurian connection with the bear and Arthur himself in any of the mythologies and things like that?
The one that I found most interesting from a bit purely selfish perspective is as I said, I live in Stratford. I live in Warwickshire.
Oh, right. Wow. Yeah.
Our county symbol is the bear chained to a staff. And so again, it's what you're saying about things being hidden in plain sight. When I started this book, I went, oh, I live in a place with a bear, you know, with the bear as its symbol. And there was this attempt by one of the previous Earls of Warwick to align himself with King Arthur, to show himself as having legitimacy and strength. And that is why the Warwickshire sigil is a bear. Because of Arthur. Wow. It kind of goes right back there. And this attempt in the ages for the Earls of Warwick to say, yes, we are proper Earls, we should be here, we should be governing this land.
Yeah. Yes, and I absolutely. I mean, the sense of power of the bear. You know, every now and again, I've been on tour somewhere like Canada, and I've drifted off into some woods, and even I remember at one of it was a Florida pagan gathering. There was a brown bear in one of the big bins, you know. Yeah. And you know, having said that, I was quite happy. It was quite a long way away, because there's a sense that you know, although they look, and they do. I mean, they do look cuddly, don't they?
They do, yes.
They do. But, you know,
you don't want to get close.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. No. So one of the most emotional points of your book for me was when you were talking to Kate and Corwin.
Oh, yeah.
I was organising open rituals at the winter solstice. I never got a chance to get along to one of the bear feasts, but a lot of our grove did, a lot of my friends did. They said, and I saw photographs, and the whole energy of that just seemed absolutely wonderful. So maybe, you know, I know you had quite a long conversation with Corwin. Maybe just talk a little bit about that kind of the spiritual aspects of the bear feast, and, like you say, the oldest goddess that we know about is a bear goddess.
I mean, again, it's, you know, it's one of these things where it's what we said about things being in plain sight. I'd met Corwin a couple of years ago at an Ove Gorseth. And I had no clue that Corwin did all of these things. And it wasn't until I actually started writing the book that somebody went, oh, have you tried the bear tribe? Corwin runs it. And I was like, oh, okay. I then I went off and had a chat to him. these I haven't actually been able to get to one because of the way that it's fallen over COVID and the pandemic and all of that. But basically what Kate and Corwin came up with, which is just inspirational, really, they recreated one of the ancient bear rite festivals, which was documented in the early 20th century by a man called Hallowell. And he went around several boreal cultures and found that there were these similarities in their rituals, where they all kind of went out and hunted a bear in a very ceremonial, almost apologetic way, where they did kill a bear. Sometimes they took a cub and then raised it in the village as well, but it would involve the slaughter of a bear. But it was done with probably about as much reverence as you can for killing something. I mean, it was just very ceremonial. They'd kill the bear, they'd take it back to the village. The people who'd killed it would be kind of celebrated as heroes. The bear would be cut up and eaten and cooked, and then there'd be all series of kind of games and celebrations. And Kate and Corwin have restaged that. And you turn up the day before, you have like parties and celebrations and a bit of, I don't think you have the celebration on the night before, but there's kind of like a nice stead fod where people share music. And then you wake up in the mornings and you actually go out and you kind of symbolically hunt someone who is the bear in a bear skin. And that is brought back. And so it's done from Kate and Corwin's perspective as a celebration of the oldest kind of method of worship, but also as a way of honouring all of the food that we eat and all of the resources that we take from the earth. So the bear is used as a symbol, as I said, of Mother Earth and of the resources that we take. And so by doing it that reverently, you thank the universe, you thank the world for what you give, for what you get, sorry, not what you give, yeah, for the things that you take. And the pictures that I've seen of it and the experiences of the people who've been, it's amazing. I really, really hope to go along one day when coronavirus leaves us. So it would be great to go to that.
Yeah, well, they've moved to Orkney now, so
you
know, it's a blooming long drive.
Yeah, that is a long way to go. A very long way.
Yeah. And you met some other, really interesting people, some artists and things like that, and all inspired by this beautiful animal that has been extinct on our island for many, many years now. I know that I wrote a song called Spirit of Albion, which has the chorus, the crane, the wolf, the bear and the boar, no, not the 12. Yes. Well, there are now cranes.
Yes, there are.
There are now boar. It's rapidly becoming very out of date. Yeah. I don't think they will reintroduce bears into the New Forest. Yeah.
There is a bit at the beginning of chapter 2 where I go to a place called the Wild Place Project in Bristol, where they're not trying to introduce them, but they're getting as close as they can, where they have set up this woodland area where there are wolves and bears. The idea was that they would be mixing together, and you walk through it amongst the trees at the top on a wooden walkway, and it's just glorious. And it's like, this is what our woods would have looked like with bears, and it's as close as we're going to get. So they're never coming back, I doubt it.
No.
But that's as close as we're going to get, I think.
I remember some years ago at the Artemis gathering they held, there was a wolf trust who used to bring along wolves in to the festival, and you could walk in and sit with the wolves.
Oh my goodness!
And I did it with my boys. Just sat there with these wolves, and they just, like, you'd go over to them and they'd lift their paws up to have their tongues tickled, like dogs and things like that. But I can't imagine that same kind of experience happening with a bear.
No, at the Wild Place Project, these two bears walked past. That I was kind of in this like little concrete bunker with a glass wall, and one of the bears walked past, and she's so kind of cute and fluffy, and you're like, oh, she's wonderful. And then you look at the glass, and the glass has got the paw prints on it and the claw marks on it. And you're like, yeah, okay, I'm not going any closer than this. That's it.
Yeah, there's that certain reverence of something. We're so, I think, so used to the idea of being particularly here top of the food chain kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, I mean, it's different when I go to Australia, and I realize I'm not. You know, and when you're in the woods in certain areas of Canada and stuff like that, you realize that, you know, you are really part of nature, and nature, everything in nature eats everything else, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I could end up being that, and it wouldn't
being
be
dinner.
It wouldn't be because it's a murderous bear. It's because it's a bear, and I'm food, and this is good protein on my, you know. So and
of course, the more we kind of dig into nature, the more that we kind of go into these places, the angrier these animals get, because they're losing their habitat. So whereas they could be kind of off deep in the woods and being kind of quite nice and happy and not particularly worried about a human, suddenly we're there on top of them, and it creates all sorts of problems. A few years ago, I stayed in North Carolina in a I won't say it wasn't a hut. It's a very nice house at the top of a mountain, and it was absolutely beautiful. But there was this sense when there were things around us in the woods, and you could hear the noises in the woods, and you were like, "What is that? I might just go and sit on the porch," you know, because it's you, in those situations you're just not sure what's looking back.
Yeah. So, did you get any other kind of surprises from the book, as far as, you know, for instance, Andata? You know, there's that connection with Andata and Andraste, and I wondered when I was looking at it. Down here, we have the ancient forest of Anderida or Anderida, which used to, you know, stretch from Dover right the way to Southampton. It said that a squirrel could get up there and not touch the ground all the way across. And our grove and Gorseth is named after this ancient primeval kind of south of England forest. But its name is Anderida or Anderida, which is the Ander. And I just wondered whether or not, I mean, I haven't heard that is a connection with the bear, but I guess it could be, you know.
And the AND, I think, stands for, hang on, I'm getting somewhere here, because there is Andata.
That's right, Andata, yeah.
So that's where the arth comes from.
Yeah.
But the and means great, I think.
Okay, so it must be something like great woodland or great forest or something like that. Yeah,
because she's the great bear. And Andata comes from the same kind of area as Artio. So one of the things I propose is that actually Andata and Artio are the same. They are the same bear goddess, essentially. It's just that Artio is kind of how she's normally known, and then she's kind of elevated to the great bear when she's referred to as Andata.
Right. Okay. You have also published another book, the Ritual of Writing. Is that right?
The Ritual of Writing.
The Ritual of Writing. Yeah. So, can you talk a little about what that book was about?
Yeah.
What led you to that book?
They're the books of my two grades, if you like. So, the Ritual of Writing is my bardic grade book, which I wrote when I kind of had finished the bardic grade, and Artio and Artuis is my ovate book. Right. It's the one that I wrote as part of my ovate studies. So I used to be a creative writing teacher. It's how I actually ended up coming to Druidry, because I was a creative writing teacher, and I was like, you spend your time trying to inspire everyone else to write, and when you're doing that, you find that there's not an awful lot of time for you. Mm-hmm. So I was what I call vaguely pagan. I wasn't particularly anything, but I knew that I liked marking the wheel of the year and things like that. And I was just Googling around one night, and I found the Obod website, and it promised me Arwen. I was like, oh, okay, it's going to give me inspiration. I like the sound of this. So between that and the Wheel of the Year, I was kind of sold, which is kind of how I started as a bard. So I started the bardic work, and literally everything, my inspiration just stuck. It was like I was blocked somehow for a good 9-10 months. I just wasn't writing anything. I just couldn't work out why it was happening. And I went to a really wonderful course with Matthew McCabe and Penny Billington on ritual. And during that weekend, they kind of said to us, you need to put things in your rituals that work for you. Okay, that you're not just meant to do it out of the book, you're meant to actually adapt this stuff. So I kind of went away and thought, okay, well, why are the rituals not quite working for me? And I identified that what I needed was a story. I needed a story for each of the 8 of the Wheel of the Year festivals. So I sat down to write them, because I can stand up and perform and read things out, but it's not my comfort zone. I used to kind of act, and I had to give it up because I get such terrible stage fright. So standing up and reading or extemporizing in front of people is not what I do. I prefer to sit down and write it and really kind of craft it in. So I ended up with these 8 stories, and I thought, oh, I know, I'll send these off to a publisher, because I think these are quite good, and let's see what somebody else thinks. So I sent them off to Moon Books, and within about 2 days, they got back to me and said, thank you very much, but no, thank you. We don't really publish this sort of thing. But what they'd done is they'd passed the book out to some of their readers, and one of their readers was Nimue Brown. And I had a conversation with Nimue, because she got back to me, she said, I really love the stories. They're not publishable, but have you thought about writing a book about why you write? And I kind of went, oh, okay, well, I'm a creative writing teacher. I write things. This should be fairly easy. But it wasn't, because I was kind of still in a full-time job. So I actually left my job as a teacher, threw everything to one side and went, I'm going to go off and write a book. And that's what I did. And that's what came out of it, was the ritual of writing. Right. So the first half is really about how you write these festival tales, how you write a story to celebrate Beltane or Imbolc and all of those kinds of festivals, how you do that and why you should do that. And then the second part of the book takes that further, looks at things like poetry, non-fiction, writing using the Wheel of the Year in other ways as well. So it's very specific to start with, but then kind of goes on to become something quite different.
Right. Okay. Wow. And did that open up your flow of Arwen afterwards?
Oh, totally. The weekend that I came back from that course with Matt and Penny, that was it. Like literally, I've written 2 books. I've written another book, which is a fiction, which I'm still doing a second draft of. I turned 70 Kylie Minogue songs into sonnets. I mean, there's no stopping me now. I write at the drop of a hat.
And how long have you been in Obod? When did you join?
About 2015.
Right. Okay.
About 20. So I'm relatively new, I suppose. I still kind of count myself as relatively recent, but yeah, it's just changed my life. I've not really had a belief or a spirituality before that which had stuck. I'd gone through lots and lots of different variations of different types of spiritualities, and this one has stuck, and I love it. It did just really change my life.
Yeah. What do you think's different? If you had all these other experiences, what do you think is what's kept you here with these weird druids?
I think part of it is that druids aren't weird. Druids are lovely people. And this is one of the things, and it's something that Penny said on that training weekend that made me realize I was in the right place. She said, pagans order the universe to do things. I command the wind, I command the elements. She said, druids ask nicely. And that for me just summed it up. And that is the feeling I get from Obod.
Yeah.
I've got some lovely friends. I love coming to the gatherings. The gatherings are amazing. And I just can't wait until we can do those again, frankly.
Yeah. Well, we're all set for next June. That's a fact. So there we are. Yeah. It's been a strange time. How have you weathered the storm of this strange year and a half? Have you been okay? Have you been? Yeah.
It's been hard. I live with someone who is extremely clinically vulnerable, who already has to use medical oxygen to breathe. So this virus coming along was hellish. It was just the worst possible thing that we could have imagined. So I actually locked us in the house 10 days before the government told us to stay in, because it was like, we can't risk this. And I think we were one of the last groups of people out. There was a big gap where I literally just didn't even leave the house. And that was tough. That was hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when your spirituality is all about connection with the natural world, it's been a hard ride for a lot of us, I think.
Absolutely.
For me, it's certainly affected my AON and my songwriting, because I gained so much inspiration from the community and being in the community. And we couldn't be in the community.
No,
so, that was that really.
I mean, I as I said, I turned 70 Kylie Minogue songs into sonnets. That was during the first lockdown. That was to kind of keep my brain vaguely functioning. But I also realised I was at that juncture between Ovate and Druid. And so one of the other things I decided to do was to throw myself at my Druid studies, and I moved between the Ovate grade and the Druid grade during that first one. So I really, once I'd got over the existential terror of what was happening, I tried to make the most of the gift of the time that I was given, I suppose. And then in the second lockdown, I wrote my fiction book, which is again about Druidry. It's like a young adult's introduction to Druidry, and there's a plan for them to be 3. I've written the bardic one, but quite when I'm going to get around to the other 2, who knows? But yeah, so I've tried to use it as much as I can.
Yeah. Well, I read the book. It's a wonderful book, Artio and Arteos, A Journey Towards the Celtic Bear Gods, by Andrew Anderson, who is our guest this month on DruidCast. I've published by Moon Books, available from all of the usual places.
Absolutely.
And the other book, A Ritual of Writing, as well, thoroughly recommended. So thanks for being a guest here. As we look forward, I will see you at some point in Glastonbury rather than on a screen in my studio, which has been how it's been for a while.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. It really has been an honour. Thank you.
It's been great to have you on. I'm sorry it took you a little while, but it's been brilliant to have you here. All right. Thank you then.
Excellent.
Thank you. Cheers.
I thoroughly enjoyed reading Andrew's book. It really takes you on a journey and is highly recommended, especially if you have a love of the bear. Go and get yourself a copy. After the interview, you heard another tune from Richard Durrant from his album Stringhenge. This one, A Brief History of Wood. What astounding guitar playing. Blows my mind. Absolutely wonderful. The next song was sent in by Rich Morgan and is about a plan to reopen an abandoned quarry in the beautiful Mendip Hills. There is also a YouTube video, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes. If you would like to help, please do watch the video and write to Somerset County Council to give your objections to the plan if you are moved to do so. There is a number to quote in your letter, and that will also be in the show notes. After Rich's song, you will hear me read a poem written by Renae from Texas. It was inspired after hearing my song Ceridwen and Taliesin from my Antler Ground and Standing Stone album, and it basically gives an idea of what might have come next. So thank you both for sending in your creations for the show, and it's a pleasure to include them. And if you are a poet, storyteller, musician or songwriter, do send in your work to podcast@druidry.org. We only publish once a month, so I can't promise to include everything I am sent, but I always listen and it's always a joy. So enjoy the song and the poem.
Edge of ruin, we remembered Mendip's glory, when the stones we used for building homes and dry laid boundary walls. Now a notice down at Merehead gives us all a hardcore warning. Don't use this footpath when the blasting siren calls. Now the hills are hollowed out, crushed to dust and spread about by yellow diggers carving out some motorway somewhere. As we came out of the trees, we looked out over West Town Quarry, shut down for 40 years and growing wilder as we stood. And we said, reopen this to build more roads, you must be crazy. But the only ones who heard us were the trees of Asham wood. Now the hills are hollowed out, crushed to dust and spread about by yellow diggers carving out some motorway somewhere. In a few short years it could all be over. No hills or trees, just car parks everywhere. Between the villages, just limestone bridges flying through the air. Before Stonehenge was dreamt of, Asham wood stood tall and mighty. But still those trees remember the great forest that we've lost, dug up for someone's profit to build roads that no one needs. How can we do nothing? How will we bear the cost? Pretty soon there could be no more hills to hollow out, crushed to dust and spread about by yellow diggers carving out some motorway somewhere. Now the hills are hollowed out, crushed to dust and spread about by yellow diggers carving out some motorway somewhere.
Laughter carries over misty hills, lusty gusts and feminine trills, the castle outside cold and dark, like a heart of sin, bright, luxurious and sensual within. Silks and velvets of green, purple and red, hundreds of candles flicker overhead. Foreign gentry mix with roots of the land, makes a sickly sweet brew that deadens the mind and beguiles the hand. Centre sits the king proclaimed, of a land torn and maimed, surrounded by jesters, men of agreement and guile, and one who sat at the right alone, unmatched in dignity and style. For what is a king in a foreign land but meat on a stick that awaits the hand of those who are loyal to that which they call mother? And if one blade fails, it is taken up by another. But gain confidence of the most respected, and the rest will follow suit. For if the wiser give counsel to the invaders, the gods must have decreed the pillage and loot. Though here is the question always near to mind, about the cunning of the wise and their kind. Have they truly succumbed to the glitter and the gold, or do they seek only to know their prey, as with the predators of old? But tonight is no time for such heavy thoughts. When moonlight spills o'er the bogs and glades, and wine pierces the senses like silken blades, the bard of wisdom, keeper of stone and tree, the greatest poet the land would ever see, still though was a bard, only one of three, still young, and not yet of the ocean's depth, he would one day be. For how can a young man's soul disdain the adoring glances of beauty and grace, esteem and dependence from one who wields the mace, and by his own words awe on every face? And so we find, as is always the case, the fate of men intertwined with the fate of place, and somewhere on the land a forked path winds, holding space for the choice that binds the decisions of men and earth, while beyond the veil all wait and anticipate the birth. It is said the Great One provides solutions to every problem bare. We need but listen and follow the music, and not be chiding at what the solution may wear. Dewdrops reflected the starlight above, washing bare feet with a special love. A shadow moves across hill and plain, the dark cape belying the tortuous mark of Cain. The darkness gives ease to a body twisted and torn, of all human features humble yet not forlorn. Moonlight casts its gaze on a face strange to behold, a mixture of torment and peace, and a story yet to be told. Gently to the great castle he walks, gently on the great door he knocks. When no one hears, he sings the door wide, and with tortuous movements gently steps inside. Music fades, as does the clamour. Horror fills eyes in place of enamor. What is this thing that has descended out of darkness, ripping them from fantasy to life's cold starkness? They shudder and retreat as forward he moves, then marvel at the softness of a voice filled with truths. Requests humbly, but not without kin. I would have a word with the greatest of bards, Taliesin. A gasp rolls through the room as a single wave, and the king rises in anger, his face to save, and a hand waves him back to his seat, and Taliesin rises this metal to meet. What is it you wish, my good man, that you would so boldly stand amongst the people so beneath your stature, and hold us so captured by your enrapture? The crowd tittered and leaned back in their seat, relieved now and assured of an unexpected treat. Unaffected, the intruder gazed back and spoke, to release the salmon from the net of capture. The bard frowned and put it forth. And will you tell us now, for its great worth, so to your honour we may have the key? What can we call you? What may your name be? I am called the Eagle of the Sea. A frown flickered across the golden brow, familiar, but he could not say how. And how do you intend to set free this salmon plucked from the sea? By fulfilling a family prophecy. And by whom was the prophecy sent, that by name credence may be lent? For the soundness of scrying is found in the soul of the seer to which it is bound. It was told to me by a hen, who heard it from a falcon, who heard it on good report from a hound. Something stirred deep within, of a memory from who knows when, another life perhaps, it matters not, for his attention was thoroughly caught. Then tell me, my friend, why it must be that this salmon must be set free. How can one fish be more than another? Because it holds the key to brother against brother. To what lock does this key hold sway? To what stage is this story a play? Where will I find these brothers' raised hand? Across a bloody and torn land. And why should I make this matter one of my own? For another's deeds to seek to atone, why speak to me of a story so old? Because it speaks of a heart turned cold. And if this heart has turned to stone, all will but return to bone. Why is now the time you seek release? Because the last path will soon be passed that leads the land back to peace. And what events would have to unfold to bring this peace of which you were told, to bring this time of plenty? To align the story of the one and the many. Who is this one whose story so entwined, this keeper that pulls the many into one mind? Where is the face of one who carries man's suffering in his tear? Reflected on the surface of a salmon weir. To his seat the bard dropped, his great voice was stopped. When spoke again it was soft, like a scent of flowers is faintly waft. This was the intent in the beginning, to help the people who were not winning. But I am afraid it is too late, and in loss of vision I have sealed the fate. Softer still a voice then spoke, not too late, and no time to wait. The people need only counsel to replace hate. And if I may ask, who might you really be? And of what place for yourself do you see? And what is the tie that binds you to me, that links Taliesin to the eagle of the sea? The gaining of a birthright in a time of need, two brothers bound by a swallowed seed, by wisdom gained while apart, stronger together, a revolution to start. At this, the king bolted to his feet, anger in his voice, his face like a beat. How dare you of sedition sing, and question my superiority over this kingdom as king? 2 faces slowly turned, one golden in body and mind, the other twisted, simple, yet wise and kind, each with a power sublime, now joined, held the power of time and space. What is a man who severs a mother from a child, or a people from their land? A gasp ran through the lords and ladies hard, while an old black hen ran cackling from the courtyard, while in the shadows stood a man old and blind, satisfaction on his face clearly lined. Taliesin spoke. Feel in your soul, good king, the call of the land you claimed. The brother spoke. Hear in your dreams, O king, the cry of those you have maimed. Taliesin spoke. For the mother has heard the child's cry and has decreed war. The brother spoke. And when we return to the people, your power will be no more. With that, the final spell, they walked into the night, side by side, and each with a brow just as bright, while the honoured guests slipped quietly from the room, and the king was left alone in the grand castle that was to be his tomb, his tomb, his tomb. I loved that poem so much, and I hope you did too, but this music means we are approaching the end of the show. But before I go, let's have the results of last month's competition. The prize was a copy of the Plant Spirit Oracle deck and book by Dana O'Driscoll, and the question I asked was, the magical plant belladonna is known by what other common name? Well, the answer is, of course, Deadly Nightshade, and the first name drawn from the hat this month and winner of that gorgeous deck and book is Danielle Sampson from Ontario, Canada. Congratulations, Danielle. They will be with you very soon. I have 2 copies of Andrew's book, Artio and Arteus, to give away this month, so we will have 2 winners. And the question I'd like you to answer is, and I'll be very honest, you won't have to dig too deeply for this answer. The question is, which animal do the god and goddess Artio and Arteos represent? Which animal do the god and goddess Artio and Arteos represent? Email your answer along with your full postal address to podcast@druidry.org, and 2 of you will win a copy of that fabulous book. Well, my friends, that is a show. I'm doing another streamed live house concert Saturday the 28th of August at 8 p.m. UK time from my Facebook page and YouTube channel. So do join me for chat, music and community if you are available. Other than that, I will see you next month for episode 174. Stay subscribed to DruidCast, and I wish you all peace and blessed be. Goodbye.